Good afternoon. I'm Hugh McKay, President of the Board of Directors of the City Club of Cleveland. What from the Cape can you discern at sea? That's one of the first lines the aspiring actor can recall delivering as a professional. He was paid $45 per week, spent most of his time moving scenery, but he got his actor's equity card and began an acting career. That actor was Tom Hanks, and his launching pad was the Great Lakes Theater. The Great Lakes Theater has been the acting home to many other luminaries, such as Hal Holbrook, Olympia Dukakis, Gene Stapleton, Cloris Leachman, and countless other great talents. And the artistic directors of the Great Lakes Theater have been a series of true greats in the world of theater, from Arthur Lithgow, Lawrence Cara, Vincent Dowling, Gerald Friedman, and James Bundy, currently the Dean of Yale Drama School. In 2002, today's speaker became part of this storied legacy as Charles Fee took the reins as producing artistic director of the Great Lakes Theater. Under the leadership of Mr. Fee, the Great Lakes Theater has moved to an even higher plane of quality and national recognition. In 2010, it completed a highly successful capital campaign to renovate the Hanna Theater as a new and permanent home, while dramatically building an endowment to ensure its great legacy. Mr. Fee has pioneered a unique and nationally recognized producing partnership with the Idaho and Lake Tahoe Shakespeare Festivals, featuring shared seasons with a single resident artistic company. Through Actors Symposia and a variety of outreach programs for students and adults, the Great Lakes Theater reaches over 85,000 people every year. Mr. Fee holds a bachelor's degree from the University of the Pacific and a master's of fine arts from the University of California. He has worked with such companies as the Old Globe Theater, the La Jolla Playhouse, and the Los Angeles Shakespeare Festival. He also served as artistic director of the Sierra Repertory Theater in Northern California. In 2009, Charles was honored for his leadership by the Cleveland Arts Prize as a recipient of the Martha Joseph Award. Other awards include the Mayor's and Governor's Awards for Excellence in the Arts in Boise, Idaho. Charlie Fee's vision of the Great Lakes Theater is as, quote, a connection of shared history of humanity that brings a community together, unquote. And the theater allows us to, quote, gain an enormous sense of compassion. Charlie Fee has done much to help bring our community together and to enhance Cleveland's esteemed position in the world of theater, leading what Tom Hanks calls, quote, a place of artistic worship. Please welcome to the City Club, Charlie Fee.
Thank you, son. Thank you so much. It is, as I'm sure all of you in the room know, it is a thrill to come to the City Club. It is daunting to come to the City Club, and it's nothing, short of one of the great moments in your life when you can speak at the citadel of free speech. And I am just as pleased as I can be to be here. I can't believe Hugh began by playing the Tom Hanks card immediately, leaving me absolutely nowhere to go except my relationship to Tom, which is deep and lasting. There, I've played it too. What can we do? All of us in the not-for-profit arts and in the not-for-profit sector, just as members of the City Club, want to begin anytime we're in public to thank all of the members of our team that make it possible for us to produce our work and make it possible for me to stand here today. We have one of the great not-for-profit communities in the country in Cleveland, and it was established well over 100 years ago, but certainly 100 years ago, the City Club and our museum and our orchestra and so many of the great assets in this community were created. I'm very, very happy and fortunate to have so many members of our Board of Trustees here today, and I want to recognize just a few. I could go on and on recognizing our board, but I won't. I'll begin with our president of our board. Mitch Blair is sitting right over here and working tirelessly for the company. Mitch, I'm glad to have you here today. And the chair of our board, Natalie Epstein, who has been not only a longtime friend, but just a family member now and a person who has given me so much in my work here. Amazing as it may seem, Natalie was president of our board 30 years ago when we moved from the west side of Cleveland to downtown to Playhouse Square. really the transformational moment of our company and at a transformational time in Cleveland. But we've also got with us, Mort Epstein as well, Natalie's husband, who is a great supporter of ours. Almost all of our year-round staff is here today. I can't introduce them, but it's the staff and our artists and our board that bring all of our work together. And now, not just in Cleveland, but in 2 other cities, in 2 other states, in what is a very unusual, I think unique, producing model, artistic model, and model of collaboration. What I'm going to talk about today is that very subject of collaboration and innovation, and how we got to this strange, eventful history of producing in 3 wildly different states, and seemingly different audiences with very different histories, and really a very different sensibility. Outdoor stages on lakes and in the desert, and indoors in one of the great theaters in America at the Hanna Theater in downtown Cleveland. So we'll talk about collaboration. Just as I was walking in, I saw my friend Steve Minter, who's sitting over here, and I mentioned to him that we're having a great season, and we're having great good luck in all of the collaborations that are taking place in Playhouse Square, and I'll talk about some of those specifically later. And Steve mentioned to me that recently he had a discussion with a foundation. I won't name it, Steve, and it wasn't in Cleveland. That is, like many foundations today, most, in fact, and the National Endowment for the Arts, focusing their grant giving on ideas of collaboration, in the arts particularly. And the foundation's response was, we have put together a great collaborative grant. The difficulty is getting anyone to take it and to really work on collaboration. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And they're honest reasons. Collaboration is not the easiest thing in the world to achieve. And we have to be honest about that, and we cannot be naive and just say, collaboration should be the simplest thing, and everybody in the arts just collaborate. It doesn't work that easily. But I'm going to just dial back, partly for our audience in Bangor, Maine, and I know we have at least one member there, Hugh's brother, I think. To give a brief history of our company. This is our 50th season. I know it's only half of the City Club's life, but still a remarkable achievement for anyone in the arts, and particularly in the theater. The average length of a theater in America today is about 7 years. And we in Cleveland have supported 2 great theaters for decades now. Great Lakes Theater for 50 years, and of course the venerable Cleveland Playhouse for almost 100 years itself. We began in 1962 in the West Side, in Lakewood, and were started very unusually, not by a group of artists, but by a group of civic leaders and school board members who wanted to create a classical theater experience for their students and their community. So from our inception, this company had in its mission to create great, compelling classic works focused on Shakespeare, but also to always have in mind that they are a conduit to education, that they're reaching out to students year in and year out through student matinees and all kinds of outreach that have developed over those years. So it has always had that mission, dual mission of service to the community. We were in Lakewood for 20 years and then moved to Playhouse Square. At the moment that Playhouse Square, which is the largest historic theater renovation project in the United States, was at the moment in peril. The theaters were in disrepair. There was a sense that they would all be lost. This is, for those of you not from Cleveland, 5 magnificent theaters, all built in 1921 during the golden age of Cleveland and industrialism in the Northeast. And all theaters that were essentially going to waste. Again, the community came together and said, we don't know exactly what the future of Playhouse Square, and it wasn't even called that at the time, will be, but we cannot lose this national treasure of these theaters. And, in classic style, perhaps if we rebuild them, save them, then they will come. And in fact, that's what happens. And I see Laney Haddon sitting right over here. Laney's standing, I think, chained to the State Theater at some moment to stop the bulldozers. with Ray Shepherdson. And so Playhouse Square was saved. We became the first resident company of Playhouse Square and have remained partners, collaborators, in Playhouse Square for the next 30 years of our lives, bringing us to our 50th year. When I arrived in 2001, an auspicious time, as you may recall, September 9/11 was a changing point for all of us in the country, and certainly for our company for many, many reasons. The tragedies of 9/11 rippled through every asset in every community and affected all of us in myriad ways. On that same day, not, of course, with anything other than just the terrible kismet of it, James Bundy also came to our board to resign as artistic director, having accepted an incredible position and an iconic position as the dean of the Yale School of Drama. And James, of course, has gone on to an extraordinary career at Yale. So the company faced many crises all at the same moment. 2 weeks later, we opened the most expensive production in our history. It was a co-production with commercial producers in New York, and as you can imagine, suddenly there was no market for that product. So the company had rolled the dice, and a perfect storm hit, and we were in full-blown crisis. That's when people call me. When no one else is interested in your theater company. That's not true. It came about through friends and relationships, and I had known, of course, about Great Lakes Theater Festival my whole career, as everybody does in the theater. And they were doing a search for leadership, and I had just completed 10 seasons in Idaho, and we had built a magnificent new amphitheater. And at that moment, often in theaters and not-for-profits, remember this, board members, that's when your staff says, well, we did that, what's next? So I did come to Cleveland to meet with the Board of Trustees and to discuss leadership of this company and where the company might go. The reality was, I have to say, I didn't know what to do about the problems that were facing Cleveland. And my first response, honestly, was just go home to Boise and don't look at this again. Cleveland is an exciting, amazing, the artistic history of this city is without compare. But it was at a moment of a kind of crisis that I thought, do I really need to sign up for this? I don't know how to reimagine this theater company for the future, for the next year alone, or 10. We were more than $1 million in debt, and at the very middle of a season. But, as so often happens, you meet a group of people, the board of members, all of the trustees were still forward-thinking, undaunted about the history and now future of the company, and a staff that was really remarkable and all absolutely willing to look at any ideas. So, we came up with a plan. That plan was a short-term solution, and it afforded me an extraordinary opportunity, and I have to say, I thought I'm going to take it. That was to do this. In that year that we were going to be looking at, which was 2002, if I could get the Board of Trustees at the Idaho Shakespeare Festival and the Board of Trustees in Cleveland to agree to a wholesale collaboration for one season, bringing all of the plays from the Idaho summer season to Cleveland to perform in the Ohio Theater, we would do several things. One is we would cut the costs of that one season enormously, and we had to do that. That was first and foremost our job. We had to bring the producing costs down immediately in order to have the time and the wherewithal to rebuild the financial model of the company. But it also afforded me an obvious thing. When you've been producing theater for 10 years in Boise, Idaho, and it is a great, great place to produce theater, in a beautiful theater by a river, surrounded by the foothills, you love the community and you love the space, but you can find yourself thinking, would anyone other than a Boise audience like our work? And how will we ever know whether or not our work is in fact, as we all believe, of course, at a national level? Perhaps in a collaboration with Cleveland, our ability to bring our artists and our work to Cleveland will tell me something about that. I know it will be good for the artists. I know it will be good for me, and so we considered it a Fulbright. What this required, of course, was 2 boards of trustees to take a gigantic leap of faith. That's what collaboration is about. It is about risk-taking, and it is about trusting your collaborators to do and to see a future that is in alignment with your goals in whatever city you are in. And who can know if that will work out until you take the risk? Cleveland, I will tell you, our Board of Trustees were enormous risk takers. Yes, crisis helps. If you don't have a lot of other options, you are willing to look at some crazy ideas. In Boise, it was a little different because in Boise, we weren't facing a crisis, but we had a very progressive board and a very forward-looking board and a board of trustees that themselves thought, you know what, a relationship to one of the great arts cities of America with an enormous history for a company, you know, of Western, new, high-tech city would be really interesting for all of us, as long as we just do it for 1 year. So we did it for 1 year. And thankfully, the community in Cleveland responded very positively to our work on stage. The artists and I and the staff, I think, were excited by our work and were having a blast together and really loving the relationship that we were creating among these 2 cities. So we did it again the next year, and we did it again the 3rd year. Now, I want you to know we still have no written agreement among our companies of how we will do this and how it will be structured and what's at stake. And we did it just on a year-by-year basis for the first 3 years, and then we all looked up and said, now, wait a minute. We've retired all of the debt of the company. We're performing in the black each year and returning small surpluses. We are sustaining our artists over a much longer period of time by allowing them work in 2 cities seamlessly, and so that you're taking a contract in Cleveland and producing a play here, and then moving it to Boise, and then working on 2 new plays in Boise, playing them there, and then moving them back to Cleveland, and then going into Christmas Carol. So for many members of our company, you've gone up to now about a 40-week season of employment, which has incredible benefits for the acting company and the other artists. And you begin to think, this really does work. Now, that's when we formalized what we were doing, in the sense that we got our 2 boards together for the first time, really, in a room, and said, this is working. We'd like to continue the experiment. Let's set some of the, the ground rules here in terms of how we will produce and where we will produce and who will benefit and how you will benefit. And we won't write any of it down, but we'll have a handshake. And we have moved on from there. 10 seasons later, we have shared now over 40 productions between Boise and Cleveland. 3 years ago, we added Lake Tahoe to this, and I'll get to that in a second. 40 productions between the 2 cities, saving in terms of the overhead cost of those 2 productions that are built in each city, then transferred, making 4 productions that are moving around the country every year, saving on average about $200,000 a year per company per season in producing costs, while extending employment for the artists. So at a moment of crisis, and in a moment where the long-term prognostication for both Cleveland and the arts and growth was that there would be no growth. There would be, I guess in this horribly euphemistic phrase, there might be negative growth. We all know what that means. But we've not only been able to survive that, we have not reduced our producing schedule 1 iota. We're producing as many plays, in fact more plays this season than we have for 20 years. We have more actors on the stages in both of our cities, and we're leveraging all of the resources of these 2 cities to support an artistic company that essentially becomes a floating crap game. Not to have any gambling metaphors today. All right. So we've created something that is exciting and is unique. And it also has many, many challenges. And those are the challenges of all collaboration. As I said, it's about trust, right? And it's about making sure that your companies are receiving equal and fair benefits. That your administrative staffs are not overly taxed by the continual moving of shows, that you're looking for opportunities for not just the artists in your company, but opportunities for your administrative staff, and we have now begun to find those. And that this is a sustainable model, but a model that also recognizes things will change again, right? There is no business as usual anymore for any of us in the room, I'm sure, and certainly for those of us in the arts. Every year, we must look at what we do and what our business model is and our artistic model is and ask ourselves, what's a better response to our community? So change will come, and you have to create a model, and we have, that if change comes, we can decouple the collaboration, and we can do that seamlessly, and we can return to either the more traditional way of producing theater as completely separate from each other, or look for other kinds of partnerships. So we've been able to achieve those things. Why is collaboration so difficult? Why does Steve hear that from the foundation that he was speaking to? I think it's obvious that, look, we are the most competitive culture in the world, and we always have been. And that competition is taught to us and seen as an enormous strength in our culture. I was just reading about high school sports, right, and the questions of how we support sports in high schools, and of course over and over and over what you're hearing our parents say, yes, but they're critical for teaching the central value of teamwork and competition. Well, we are in competition with other arts groups in any of our cities. We can't deny this. You can't pretend it's not true. When Cleveland Playhouse, and our friend Kevin Moore from Cleveland Playhouse is sitting right there, when Cleveland Playhouse is producing its season and we're producing our season, we are both watching each other and saying, whose work is better? Are we up to each other? Whose audience is bigger? Who has more donors? Did we get a grant? Did they get the grant? It's inevitable. It's also not negative. It has enormous benefits to the community and to us. It keeps us sharp, like all competition. But it means when you say to an arts group, why don't you just collaborate with the Cleveland Playhouse or with Dobama or with Gordon Square? We all say, oh, yeah, that's great. We'll do that. No question. But then we also have to say to ourselves, yes, but how might it affect our position in the market? And can we really say that by collaborating, we will leverage more dollars for our productions through donations, through grants, through our sales, etc.? And if we're wrong, what happens? Now, I know, having created the drama there, I will tell you that the reality is we have discovered that none of those fears actually have borne any truth. All of the collaborations that we've been involved in, and in Cleveland, collaboration really has become the center of not just the public discussion, but it's the center of the successes that we're seeing in this city. The collaborations from Gordon Square to Playhouse Square to University Circle are all bearing fruit. They are all making stronger communities, and they are all strengthening the companies that are collaborating. It's not all arts to arts collaboration. And many times it's arts to business collaborations that are very helpful. Playhouse Square is nothing but a collaborative endeavor, and we have been part of that for 30 years. And so when Cleveland Playhouse joins us at Playhouse Square, it does nothing but increase for all of us the synergy, the energy, the excitement of producing our work. And we can tell you right now, having just finished our first fall where we were producing Cabaret, Taming of the Shrew, Cleveland Playhouse was opening their gorgeous new theater in the Allen with Galileo, of all things, Kevin. A really bold choice and an extraordinary production. Playhouse Square was presenting The Nutcracker, and what happened? As we all, chewed our nails thinking, this is it, will it work? Our sales were up 17% for the fall, the first time we've seen growth like that in 5-6 years. I know that Cleveland Playhouse had an extraordinary season, both with Galileo and Games Afoot, and their numbers were up. Art Falco just told me this week that the numbers on Nutcracker were up as well. So there's the answer. In fact, we all came together, and all of our boats, right, have been rising with that tide. So it is not without fear, and it is not without competition, and it is not to mean that every day of the week now we're suddenly just the best neighbors collaborating perfectly. But the truth is, it's bearing enormous fruit for all of our companies. So, okay, back to the main line here of this narrative, and then we'll be able to wrap it up. So we had produced now in 2 cities, and again, very different cities. And that's been exciting for us to be in 2 wildly different spaces, an outdoor amphitheater and an indoor theater, and bringing the same shows and the same artists back and forth between the 2, and noting and responding to the changes that just that simple change of space creates, indoor work as opposed to outdoor work. Realizing, first of all, that you can do it, and that it's not only achievable, that it's really exciting. It's great for the acting company to have 2 wildly different spaces to perform Taming of the Shrew in. It's also very interesting to see that the responses of the audience, while they're different in the cities, generally are supportive of the same plays. Meaning that if Taming of the Shrew is a hit in Boise, it turns out it will be a hit in Cleveland. Even though the sound and the response of the audience is quite different, that's mainly driven by space. So we found that those things work. And after 10 seasons, we asked ourselves, is it possible now to think not just reactively, right, to here's a crisis, how do we solve it, but to say to ourselves, is this model something that we can scale up? Is it possible that the advantages that we have in this wholesale collaboration would be increased if we had a 3rd city, a 3rd location to also share our work with? Just as we had begun to discuss that at a board level and had written it into our, shiny new strategic plan, we got a call from Lake Tahoe Shakespeare Festival out of the blue, literally a month after writing our strategic plan. And Lake Tahoe Shakespeare Festival said, look, we're in a bit of a crisis as well. We'd be interested in talking to you about your model. So immediately, of course, now we know, oh, well, here it is. Is it the right place? Is it the right company? Is it the right city? We don't know, but let's go meet with the team there. Same thing happens. Great team of people, an unbelievably beautiful theater sitting right on Lake Tahoe, a 40-year history of producing Shakespeare as of this coming season, and a company whose values and aesthetic are not different than ours, and that our work, we think, will thrive on. And so we embarked on yet another piece of the experiment. Again, with the Board of Trustees agreeing over handshake and meeting with our other boards to try it for a year. We're now moving into our 3rd year. So at this point, who's involved in this, right? Of course I am. I'm leading the 3 companies, and that's, I have to say, that makes all the decision-making a lot easier, I mean, it is, let's be honest, it is, one of the, we've taken the most difficult part of collaboration out of the picture and said, so it's, not 2 leaders fighting it out for whose show goes where, who's better. It's just all of us deciding where we want our plays. And all of us now means all of our acting company, our directors, our designers, our production team, from our shop managers to our stitchers, our welders, our carpenters, our stage managers are all moving from city to city. And now our administrative staff is beginning to move from city to city. Bob Taylor, executive director at Great Lakes, is now executive director of Lake Tahoe Shakespeare as well. Our marketing teams in Boise and in Cleveland are now working on the marketing for Lake Tahoe as well. So we're beginning to integrate at more and more levels of the company and finding over and over that the collaboration is extraordinarily positive. It's challenging, but it's offering great opportunities for everyone in the company. The challenges are real. It is difficult. You know, you sign up for this and you say, it'll be great. The actors will love moving constantly from one city to another. They'll just love it. And their families, and all of our families, will love the fact that we're not at home most of the year. And that we live in apartments in different places. And so, yeah, it is challenging. It's very difficult on the artists in the company. As rewarding as it is, they are without a home in a sense. They have 2 homes. They have 3 homes. But they don't have, you know, a place that they walk home to every night. And that's tough. Right? And that is showing some of the difficulties for us. We're building more and more flexibility into our scheduling for the artists in order for them to say, yes, I'll do half the season Cleveland, half the season Boise, but then I'm going to come back and be in Cleveland for several months, or go back to Boise or New York or wherever they come from. Yes, that flexibility is helpful. So we have contracts that range from 40 weeks a year to 6 weeks, just the run of Romeo and Juliet in Boise, so that we have those options as well. Of course, this, you know, for me, brings up the critical piece, which is, honestly, it's all about family. I can't possibly do what I'm doing, except that I have an incredible family that supports my choice and our work and this creative moment in my career. My wife, Lydia, who's beautiful and brilliant and incredibly patient, and my gorgeous, wonderful daughter, Alexa, Lydia and I just celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary last week, and that was an amazingly moving moment, as you can imagine. And 10 of those years of the 20 that we've been married, I've been living half the year in Cleveland and now part of the year in Lake Tahoe, and they travel with me as much as possible. But my daughter's in school right at this moment, I hope. And so it does create pressures on you. But look, just as I say that, my wife reminds me, and many of my friends remind me, that half of you in the room are probably doing the same thing. Getting on planes and flying to other cities for your work on a weekly basis. It is the world that we live in. We need to be able to move around to the various markets that our work will take us to, and it's that flexibility in being able to get out of a city and come back to a city that makes us all productive. So I'm just whining for a moment, okay? The truth is the upside is much, much higher. I think I've hit that moment, Hugh, that you warned me about in our briefing. Yes, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Excellent. I hit it. Excellent. Well done. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are listening to a forum featuring Charlie Fee, producing artistic director for the Great Lakes Theater. We will return to Mr. Fee momentarily for the traditional City Club question and answer period. We encourage you to go ahead and formulate your questions now. Please remember to keep them brief. We remind you that you are all welcome to attend City Club forums, and if you're not already a member of the City Club, we encourage you to join. We could use your membership, so please do join the City Club if you are not already a member. It's easy to visit our website to see about our upcoming programs and how to become a member. We welcome all of you here and those listening to WCPN, 90.3 FM, WCLV, WTAM, or one of the many radio stations across the country. Our television broadcast partner is WVIZ PBS IdeaStream. Television broadcasts of the City Club are made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC. Our live webcast is supported by the University of Akron. City Club of Cleveland turns 100 years old this year. We're planning a number of events, and we will be actively soliciting support from the community through our campaign for a new century. Our celebration continues with the Hope and Stanley Adelstein Free Speech Essay Contest. For more information on getting high school students involved in this, visit the 100th anniversary website. We're pleased to welcome guests at tables today hosted by Baker Hostetler and Great Lakes Theater. Thank you for joining us today. We're also pleased to welcome students who are here as part of the City Club student program. Participation of these students is made possible by a generous grant from the Jeffrey David Epstein Memorial Student Fund. With us today are students from Magnificat High School and St. Martin de Porres High School. Will you students please stand and be recognized? Now we'd like to return to Charlie Fee for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everybody, including guests. Holding the microphones today, we have City Club Program Director Carrie Miller and Special Initiatives Coordinator Phil Williams. First question, please.
Mr. Fee, it's very enlightening to hear your presentation about collaboration. When you mentioned something about craps, though, I sort of had the image of Nathan Detroit in the subway, and I, wondered if you felt that your subway, rather than being one of the subways in New York, is more the lakes of Lake Tahoe and the river in Boise here in Cleveland. More specifically, I don't understand how this collaborative model works financially, and if you could sketch out what the approximate financial resources of each company are and how they relate together to make this work practically would be helpful from my point of view.
Great, thanks. Yeah, it's really helpful, I think, to remember that the theater is, at its heart, a manufacturing industry, right? We build plays. We build productions. And so, like any manufacturing, we have enormous upfront costs for materials, labor, rehearsal time, etc., to build a production of Hamlet, for instance. The problem in the American theater, and for most theaters, is that you build that production for a cost of, let's say $350,000 to $400,000 for one play, and then you run it 14 to 25 times in your city, and you close, and the next day you virtually throw it all away. So the question then, in terms of the efficiencies and the financial model, are really pretty straightforward. If you have a second market for that same project, for that same production of Hamlet, with all those clothes and those sets and all of that rehearsal time already invested in it, and you move to another market and you can play for another 14 to 30 performances, you have essentially extended the life of the product, and you have reduced the total cost of the play for the two cities. There's nothing new in what we're doing. It is essentially a touring model. It is essentially a co-production model. You'll see that kind of co-producing model that is existing everywhere in the country today. Cleveland Playhouse has done an extraordinary job of co-producing with other companies, is the same model in essence. The difference for us is that it's a wholesale. All of our shows but one will tour, they will move, and we will extend their lives from city to city. First from Cleveland to Boise, back from Boise to Cleveland, and now saving productions that then get sent to Lake Tahoe. So your return on investment on your upfront cost for Hamlet has suddenly gone down because it's borne by two cities. We do not mix our finances in any way. What happens is we figured out just a simple form. We build two shows, a Shakespeare and a musical typically, or this year Agatha Christie, The Mousetrap, and Romeo and Juliet. We will build them in Cleveland, perform them in Cleveland, close them in Cleveland, and ship them straight to Boise. They'll open the season in Boise. Then we'll begin to build The Winter's Tale and Imaginary Invalid in Boise, and they will play out the summer season in Boise and come back to Cleveland. So two shows, each built in each city, so it's really simple. We do track the relative costs of these shows. We do make sure that that one company isn't finding a benefit that the other isn't. There are different costs in these two cities that have to be borne differently by the cities. Very different union costs in Cleveland because of the stages at Playhouse Square than in Boise, etc. But it's the simplicity of the model, frankly, that makes it work. I could go on. I shouldn't.
Charlie, you alluded to the fact that one of your concerns was what might play in Cleveland will not play in Boise. Have you had instances of where you were wonderfully received in one town but booed in the other?
Oh, well, Robert, we're never booed. Let's be honest. People don't generally boo. What they do is write you scathing emails and or send letters with no return address, which, all of us get no matter what you produce. You can't produce anything in the world that someone won't find offensive, even if they're offended by how non-offensive it was. It's like, what's the point of that? Where's the risk there? Just a bunch of people singing beautiful songs. So what? So yes, honestly, from the acting company's position and from the artist's position, every night, and this is not just the trope about live theater, it's reality. Every night, the response of your audience, whether you're sitting in Cleveland for 3 weeks or 5 weeks, or you're in Boise for 5 weeks, every night the audience is quite different. And there are nights in Boise where you think this is an absolute hit, and then you'll have a night where you think they hated it, and they hate us, and they're never coming back. And then you'll come to Cleveland, and the exact same thing will happen. The truth is, I can't think of a show that really, it in and of itself didn't play in Cleveland and it did in Boise, or vice versa. There are shows that are more successful in Cleveland than Boise, and I think kind of for obvious reasons. I'll give you this example. Othello, great tragedy, right? And we produced it a year ago. Othello has a very strong run in Boise, Idaho, without question, and does exactly what we imagine it will do in terms of projected numbers. But remember that in Boise, you're going to an outdoor amphitheater in August in a 100-degree heat sometimes to watch a play and bring a picnic and sit with your friends and have a glass of wine in that theater. And, you don't want to watch a lot of tragedies in the summer, right? When you get Othello back to Cleveland in the fall and it's in the indoor space, it not only has more focus in that indoor space, it becomes, partly because of the run in Boise, it's a stronger production. And it's, October, and everyone's feeling a bit tragic at that moment. So, so Othello's relative strength in playing in one city or the other, the dramas tend to play a little bit better in Cleveland, and the wild, crazy comedies, although Bob Grease loves all of them, so they play a little bit better on the outdoor stage.
Charlie, you've had an amazing decade here in Cleveland, going to the three-city collaboration and building a new theater. But you aren't the type, I don't believe, that just is going to sit on your laurels. Now, can you give us some kind of a clue as to what you imagine for the next 10 years? Because you can't just expand to 6 or 7 different cities, because as you say, your people won't live in 7 cities at one time. What do you see? What can you imagine that we might see in the next decade?
Thanks,
your
Bob.
vision.
Yeah, yes, we're always, all of us, looking, down the road. So what's next? What is next? I will say this, that we've hit a tipping point at Playhouse Square. And that, that's really significantly important. What I mean by that is this, and that's not me saying it, it's Art Falco, who I work with every day, and we just this week we're talking about this, and we really, all of us, I think, and I'm sure Kevin feels this too, there's a tipping point. There were a number of things that happened at Playhouse Square, from the Euclid Corridor project to the build-out of the Hanna Theater to the build-out of Idea Stream to the inclusion of Cleveland Playhouse, 3 essentially new theaters, Cleveland State University joining in the collaboration now. We have now, and of course, just last week, announcement of a whole new housing residential component coming into Playhouse Square. These are all of the assets that you want playing together at one moment. And oddly enough, the announcement of, it's not that odd, but the announcement of Zach Brule opening a restaurant at Playhouse Square, that is one of those things that everyone says, that's really different, And so there's a change coming there that is super exciting and super positive. A new kind of growth at Playhouse Square, a deepening of all of our collaborations, and I think real growth for all of us there. So that's one of the things that we look at. And how do we make the most of it? What are the other pieces that we can begin to explore? Adding a 6th show to our season this year in collaboration with Playhouse Square for the first time. Our production of Sondheim on Sondheim is integrated into the Broadway season of Playhouse Square, and that's a first for both of us. And that, I think, is a really strong potential future for both of our companies. How Cleveland Playhouse will begin to mix into those things, we'll begin to see as well, and that will also shift and I think bring a lot of energy to the district. So there's one thing. You mentioned, how can you scale up from 3 to 5 to 6 or whatever? Yes, you can, and it does interest me. I have to say, I'm interested. I'm excited by these kinds of opportunities. I'm excited by my work as an artist, and I'm thrilled by the work of building our arts model. Yeah, it would require a larger company overall to have a 4th city, a 5th city, or more. I don't know that we'll go there, but I know that we as a team, staff, board, artists, are asking ourselves and looking at where those opportunities might be for us to scale up again, begin to tour, perhaps, nationally. It's a very difficult model, touring. Extraordinarily difficult financial model. But given what we're able to leverage now with our 3 cities, it may be that touring in some form is another possibility for us. All of it is done with the single goal in mind, and that is to create better, deeper, more exciting art by finding more innovative ways of supporting that. Revenue streams, funding sources of all kind, national funding sources that we don't have available to us if we're just in the silo of one city. So that's what we look ahead toward. And we'll see what happens. But I'm retiring, Bob, so that's it. I'm going to golf. Never golfed, but I will now.
Hello. As students who have seen several of your productions, we were wondering where you find your inspiration for bringing unique elements such as music and setting them in different time periods.
Thank you. And you guys, I have to say, this is a team over here of students that we all know because they come regularly to see our student matinee programs. And I have to say, performing for Magnificat is one of the great pleasures of our company because, you got 500 girls that are really bright and super energized and dying to see actors on stage, and the actors just love it, and you guys are fabulous. Your inspiration for your work as an artist comes from every direction all the time. We're all living in the moment and listening to music, and I have to say, I have a 16-year-old, almost 17, I know. Who, she absolutely influences me in terms of her taste, her music, what she's listening to. And so those things, when you're producing a Shakespeare play, here's, you know this from reading them, it's the most open text that you will ever work on because it doesn't give you a one-page description of the manner that the Noel Coward play must be performed in 1926, and here's how the set works, etc. You have a completely open text. It's just the language. So you have to create a unified, compelling, bold, I hope, and relevant world for that language that is served by the language and that serves the language to heighten to the experience, for all of us. So yes, we're always looking at, historic art, We look at painting often, music all the time because all of the plays really rely on music to move from scene to scene, to create mood, etc. And we bring it in from wherever we can. That 1980s setting for The Taming of the Shrew, probably none of that music had you ever heard. I want to tell you something. That we did this 1980 setting of Taming of the Shrew, and, it was a total crazy blast. I loved it, and the performances were fantastic. And I had a board member, my age, 50s, write me to say, I don't get it. I mean, I love everything you've done, and the 60s setting was fantastic, but the 80s, I don't know that music at all. And you think, let's see, how old were we in the 80s? Oh, yeah, it would have been exactly the time that we would have been listening to that music, except that you, board member, were in law school doing nothing. And not listening, apparently, to any music ever written for an entire decade. It's these guys for whom the music is like, wow, who's Adam Ant? What's that about? So, I gotta stop pointing.
You've talked about the three different venues, Tahoe and Boise being outdoors and Cleveland indoors, and the difficulties and differences in putting on productions in those facilities. What feedback do you get from the actors as to what kinds of adjustments they have to make given the different venues?
Yeah, great question. It's really significant, the difference in these spaces. And I think we can all imagine it. But here's one of the just like simple things. When you open a play, the curtain goes up. There's no curtain, of course. That's it. There's no curtain on the outdoor stage. It's 8 o'clock at night. It is absolute broad daylight at 8 o'clock in Boise and at Lake Tahoe. And in Boise, we're on the farthest west side of the Mountain Time Zone, so it is daylight till 9:30. In daylight, you're playing not just in a one-room theater, meaning that it's a thrust stage and the audience is around you. You see everyone, right? They're lit exactly the way you're lit. Now, think about that. Our convention in the theater is we walk into a space, the lights go down to dark, and they come up only on the actors, and we feel ourselves as voyeurs on that world. And the actors, while you may think that they can see you, by and large can't see a thing, right? Because they're blinded by light. And so they know you're there, they can hear you, they can feel you, but it's nothing like being in a room with the lights turned on. That single difference, and I'll tell you, it's experienced most significantly by the actors who are joining the company for the first time and haven't performed outdoors, and they haven't thought about this, and they get to their first preview, and they walk out on stage, and you can kind of see them go, wow, everybody's in the same room. And it changes their relationship to the audience, and it changes the way that they speak to the audience. So in the outdoor stages, you tend to play more directly with the audience and play with them in a more connected way, and it's easier for the audience to feel that. So, that, and I'll give you one word for Tahoe, really challenging for the actors: bears. Yeah, not just in Winter's Tale. There are bears. Like Tahoe, you know how we have deer in Pepper Pike, right? We have bears in Tahoe, and bears are not quite as, they're gentle looking, but they're much more dangerous than the deer in all of our communities. Well, and they are scary, and they come into the theater, but we love them, and they're great, and the audience learns to enjoy them.
I guess I get the last question. I'm interested in, if you're now in 3 different states, 3 different communities, and the national sector, what about the politics and funding as you look at this from your leadership role of these states and communities? What's going on?
Yeah, Steve, of course, the hardest one last. No, it's a great question. The funding, so let's, and you know this well, right? Steve was head of the Cleveland Foundation as we were beginning to launch this model, and Kathleen Cerveni was working directly with us from the foundation level on how will this model function, and what will it mean to our communities, and what will it mean to a foundation, like Cleveland Foundation, to support Great Lakes Theater. If Great Lakes Theater is taking its work from Cleveland to another city, is that fair, necessarily? Right? Will that be intriguing and compelling and something that foundations and all donors will say, that's great, I'm going to give you this money and you're going to produce work here and then take it out of town? On the face of it, that seems challenging. And I have to say, I was more challenged by this idea intellectually, and Bob and I, in how we would present this to the foundation than, of course, the foundations were. Their response was much more creative and much more, of course, innovative. It simply said, look, you're creating the same production for the same number of days as you always had. The fact that we are leveraging that production not only to help your company, but leveraging foundation dollars from one city to another, it's a win-win. We're not losing anything. We're actually using our donors' dollars for a greater good. Politics, you know, we open a world that is just so complex at the moment. It's clearly not the place we're seeing great models for collaboration. So, I got applause. Good. The politics of these states, I mean, think about the states we're in. We're in Nevada, we're in Idaho, and we're in Ohio. And on the face of it, you say, oh my God, what a political brew that is. And it is a wild political brew. I mean, we've got very different, I know, Hugh's standing up. So, we do our best. I will tell you this, the politics at the end of the day for companies doing what we're doing are these. We want this in our community. Whether we're R or D or L, we want the arts in our community, and we're going to support it. And we may differ with each other in some ways, but ultimately this is what's best for our communities and critical for the growth of our communities. So we support it. Thank you. Thanks for standing.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we've been listening to Charlie Fee, producing artistic director for the Great Lakes Theater. Thank you, Mr. Fee. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.